right, how's it going, everybody? This is episode 188 of Catfish on Ice, brought to you by DraftKings, promo code THPN, and also, as always, we're part of the awesome Hockey Podcast Network. Welcome in. Getting really close here to the 2023 NHL Draft, which is going to be in Nashville. And for that, we got an awesome guest. We got Kyle joining us. What's up, man, with Last Word on Sports? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. When was the last time you were on our show? I think it was probably – trying to remember. Was it last year?
I believe, yeah. It wasn't that long ago, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like if it was last year, that's crazy. Time's flown by.
We're gonna have to dig into the archive. You've definitely been on the show before, and definitely wanted to have you back as we're getting closer to the draft here and everything. I haven't been this excited, and I don't see if you feel the same way, Kyle. I haven't been this excited about a draft overall, just not about what the Predators might do, but just the whole first round is just going to be really exciting. So many good prospects. We're finally gotten away from the all the COVID shutdowns and how we couldn't really scout some of these players like we wanted to. There's plenty of scouting reports out there for all these exciting prospects, and you do a lot of really awesome scouting reports for Last Word on Sports. That's why I wanted to have you on. So just kind of tell us what your overall feelings are about this year's draft. What's so exciting about it?
I mean, obviously the top end of the draft is just ridiculous. Adam Fantilli would be a number one overall pick in just about any draft class. You could say the same about Leo Carlsson. You could say the same even about guys like, depending on the draft, of course, but Matvei Mishkov, if it wasn't for the Russian situation. Even with the Russian situation, he would be a number one pick in most drafts. You could argue guys like Will Smith and things like that. Zach Benson even could be number one picks in regular draft classes. So the fact that this class has that many players that are that good where they could go number one in most other drafts is just insane. I think that's where the largest bit of excitement is coming from. It's the top end of the class. Then the depth of this class, it might not be overwhelmingly talented. It might not be overwhelmingly skilled. There's a lot of boomer busts. There's a lot of guys that don't really have the highest ceiling, but it is deep. I would say 3 rounds of future potential NHLers that could come through. I mean, it is a deep draft. Maybe not the most exciting, like I said, in terms of later picks, outside the top 20. It might not be super exciting, but still, I mean, there are some really good names to pay attention to.
Absolutely. We got Kyle Pereira of the Pereira Report. Last Word on Sports. Follow him at Pereira_report. That's PEREIRA_report on Twitter. You won't be mad about that. You got to get ready. You got to do your research. We're less than 2 weeks away from the draft. That's why we got Kyle on here. All right, so let me dive right in. Of course, we are a Nashville Predators podcast. So you're gonna have to talk about a little Smashville here today, Kyle, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so I've got my top 5 Preds draft board personally that I put out on predlines.com a little less than a week ago. Might revisit that a couple days before the draft. We'll see. But as of now, I want to talk about those 5. Get your thoughts on if you think they could fall to 15. Do you think they'll be in that neighborhood? Do you think they would be a good match? Tell us about their strengths and weaknesses, of course, as well. Let me start with one, which I think is the coolest name in the entire draft class for that alone. Axel Sandin-Pellikka, a defenseman with a ton of offensive game. He's probably considered one of the top defensemen in this draft class, correct?
Yes. He's actually my number one defenseman on my board.
All right. So, Kyle, go through. Do you think – I think it's a stretch that he falls to 15, but crazier things, I guess, have happened because, you get this run on offensive players. All these teams want top 10, top 15 offensive playmakers, but – Sandin-Pellikka is an offensive playmaker. He's an offensive defenseman, correct?
Correct. Yeah, he's definitely offensive leaning.
All right, so tell us about his strengths and weaknesses. Do you think he could fall to 15? Do you think it'd be a good pick for the Preds if somehow he did fall that far back, and kind of what you like about his game?
In terms of him falling to 15th overall, it's definitely possible. There are so many outstanding forwards in the class, and some of the defensemen, even guys like Sandin-Pellikka, and Reinbacher are overlooked a bit because of how good the forwards have been this year. So that's the biggest thing going for the Predators in terms of him falling to number 15, that's for sure. Whether he actually falls is questionable because all it takes is one team going for a defenseman. That could be Sandin-Pellikka. It could be Reinbacher. and that could start a domino effect of defensemen maybe being taken a bit earlier than they should. But anything could happen. Anything's possible. But the odds of him falling to 15, I would say, are moderate at best, just simply for how good the forwards have been this year. As for his strengths and weaknesses, I mean, he's an offensively leaning defenseman. When he played in the Junior 20 National League out in Sweden, he was a dominant force as a puck mover, getting pucks up ice. He was outstanding. His passing ability, his ability to work from the point area is arguably the best in the class amongst defensemen. His ability to control play, facilitate play from the point is outstanding. As for his shot, he does need to develop it a little bit, but he still has a really good shot, and his mobility, his skating is so good that he opens up those passing and shooting lanes consistently in the offensive zone. And that was, again, especially noticeable when he played against kids around his own age group in the under 20s out in Sweden. So that is what makes him so exciting and gives him such a high ceiling. It's his offensive game, especially if he continues to develop his shot. He could be a force in the offensive zone. And again, I mentioned his transitional abilities in the Junior 20 League. I mean, he was a force to be reckoned with transitionally. And in the SHL level, that definitely took a hit, but it could be because of the pressure. Like one mistake, he could be benched because he's the youngest kid on the team. Usually young kids like that don't get a big role in the SHL. So one mistake, he could be bumped off the lineup and could be a scratch or could be benched for the rest of that game. So he definitely played a safer game in the SHL, but that potential is still there because he was still effective exiting the defensive zone in the SHL, even against men. In his defensive game, and this is extremely noticeable in the SHL compared to his Junior 20 performance, his defensive game was way better in the SHL than in the Junior 20. He took less risks, so that was a big reason why his defensive game, in my opinion, is better than the public consensus believes.
Wow, that's interesting. So, yeah, here's what draws me to him, obviously, when I'm thinking from a Predators standpoint. The Predators are definitely in this transitional phase where they're going to be calling up a lot of people from their prospect pool over the next couple of years. And so obviously it's time to reload, and it's not just one position, it's all throughout the line. So that's why I think, even though I do think the Predators need help at winger and speed and pure offensive players more so than maybe a defenseman, why I put Sandin Pellikka in my top 5 trade board for the Predators is his quarterback playmaking potential on a power play. That's what draws me most. And we all know who Roman Josi is, right? Roman Josi is one of the most transitional best defensemen in the NHL. And so Sandin Pellikka, if he could eventually evolve into a top 4 defenseman in the next 3 to 4 years in the NHL, I mean, that'd be a great pick for the Predators at 15.
100%.
Awesome. We got your scouting report up here. Again, Last Word on Sports is where you can get all of the prospect scouting reports from Kyle Pereira. And so some of the stuff I'm seeing here is his skating is a thing of beauty. He's technically sound. Straight line speed is excellent. I mean, you love all of that. And then Barry Trotz, new GM now coming in for the Predators. He has already made it very clear that he wants more speed. He's going to take some risk in this draft. And I think that Trotz definitely has Sandin Pellikka on one of his short list of prospects he would love to draft at number 15. So that's how we're starting this one off here with my top 5 trade board. Let's move on to the next one. This one, I don't even want to get too excited about it because I just don't think he's going to fall to number 15. But I keep saying, and I think you might even know where I'm going here. Yeah. But I don't know. I can't understand other than one thing for why he is dropping like a boulder and dropping a boulder into the middle of a lake. Like, I don't know why he's dropping so much because he has so much top 10 potential, and that is Zach Benson. Give us the rundown on Zach Benson. I've seen some mock drafts that say that the Preds could take him. I don't know how he falls to number 15.
Yeah, so when it comes to Zach Benson, I think the biggest thing – I apologize for the background noise if you can hear that.
Hey, it happens. Hey, man, hopefully it's not too important of a phone call because we are talking about some important draft stuff right now.
Yeah, so in regards to Zach Benson's fall, I think a lot of people are overblowing it a bit because of how good the forwards are in this class. But for Zach Benson, the biggest knock on him is not even a knock, but it's his top-end speed and his skating, which – isn't even a weakness for him at all. If you're going to use that argument on Benson for him not having this breakaway speed like a Connor McDavid or a Braden Point, then you have to use that same argument on Connor Bedard, because Bedard plays very, very similarly in that aspect in terms of skating, where he doesn't blow past defenders. What makes Benson such a great skater is his agility, his acceleration and short area burst, and the fact that he's so much smarter than every single person that he goes up against on the ice every single night, where he's always 2, 3, even 4 steps ahead, where he doesn't have to be fast. If he develops that top-end speed and becomes an elite skater, look out, because Benson will rip you apart on offense, transitionally, even defensively, he'll rip you apart if he can unlock that skating. So I think it's blown a little bit out of proportion, his skating or lack thereof of top-end speed, because he just outsmarts you. He doesn't need that speed to be an effective skater. And another reason for his fall is his size, which, again, does not really merit a lot it's not a really solid argument. You have guys like Cole Caulfield, who's finding success in the NHL, and several other undersized guys who have played in the NHL, like a Marty St. Louis, who's a Hockey Hall of Famer. So to use the argument that he's too small or not fast enough is just not right. It's not right. It's wrong on so many levels, because yeah, he is undersized, but good luck trying to hit him. He's so slippery. You can't hit a guy like him.
What I think the terminology you use in your scouting report is he has a low center of gravity.
Yes. So even if you do get contact on him, most times he holds his own in those physical altercations. Mitch Brown, who works for Elite Prospects, put out a big article, very in-depth article about his ability off the boards. He's one of the most effective players along the wall and along the boards in the offensive zone, despite his size. Imagine if he bulks up a little bit more. If he was an inch taller or grows an inch taller, just imagine how much better he'll be in those situations. He's already so well-versed playing along the boards, and he's just so effective. And another thing that Mitch Brown pointed out in that article was he's tracked prospects since before 2015 when Connor McDavid got drafted, and he said that Zach Benson has the second most expected primary assists that he's ever tracked, behind only Connor McDavid, and that's in a data set that has over 3,000 players. I mean, he is that effective in the offensive zone as a playmaker. And I just don't see why people are so low on him, why he's dropping on lists. Again, the top end of the draft is so good, and it's no doubt that he would fall outside the top 5 maybe, but for people arguing that he could fall outside the top 10 just blows my mind. And if that happens, and for whatever reason he's available at number 15 for Nashville, there should be parties across the on all the streets, because
that's why I don't even want to set myself up for disappointment, because I just don't think it's going to happen. But it's going to, obviously he's number 1 on my draft board. I mean, there's no argument to be had. I'm afraid to even put him on my draft board, because I have to see it to believe it. I feel like someone like Buffalo, Anaheim, someone's going to take him. Arizona, someone's going to take him. If he falls out of the top 10, I'm trying to remember who's in that 11 to 14 range. It's like, off the top of your head, who's 11 to 14? I know Buffalo's in there somewhere. I feel like one of them's going to take Benson off the board before it gets to Nashville.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head what teams are in 11 to 14. I should know, because I have a mock draft coming up, and I should have the order in my head. But
I can find it.
Yeah, someone should absolutely take them before 15, and if they don't, they're going to look really stupid. Probably 2 years down the line. Just, he's that good. I don't see it in a world where Zach Benson doesn't become an effective player. He may not become elite in that sense, but I look at a guy like Zach Benson, I look at his effectiveness, and I tracked Tampa Bay Lightning games this year, actually. And when I was watching Zach Benson, he's not going to be a Braden Point type of player. That's not really his style. Point's more of a goal scorer. And he has more of that killer instinct in terms of scoring goals, getting to the low slot area. Benson doesn't really do that very often. But the way he attacks through the transition and off the rush is so similar to Braden Point that I don't see a world where he doesn't become an effective NHLer someday. I really don't.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like about Zach Benson's game, on top of all the offensive qualities and the way he skates so aggressively and makes things happen, makes forces guys. I love the forechecking that he does. And that fits. I mean, we don't really know exactly what the new look Predators are going to look like because they have a new head coach now as well, and Andrew Burnett. He's going to preach way more offense. He's going to preach way more taking chances up the ice as opposed to what John Hines did, which was a lot of dump and chase, a lot of winning puck battles along the boards and just trying to just out-physical your opponent. Andrew Burnett's going to have a much more of a transition speed type of game, which is why Zach Benson would be the perfect fit for the new look Nashville Predators down the road if Andrew Burnett's going to be taken over because he brings it all. He makes things happen offensively with how he skates and how he forechecks and he forces turnovers. I'm seeing in your scouting report here that he had 13 forced turnovers in 3 tracked games. That is insane, dude. That is insane to think that a player of his size forced 13 turnovers in 3 games.
Yeah, and he's just so effective in every facet: offense, transition, forechecking, back-checking, and then his defensive game is incredibly mature already. I mean, there's very little that he can't do already at a young age. And that's why, like I said, I can't imagine a world where Zach Benson isn't in the NHL one day.
For sure. Awesome. So we've got 2 off our draft board there already. We Sandin Pellikka, the defenseman, the only defenseman in my top 5 draft board, but one that I'd be very happy about because I love his offensive game. I love his transitional play. Has the potential to be a top 4 defenseman one day, and the Predators got to start thinking about reloading their defensemen in the prospect pool as well, not just wingers and centers. All right, and then we just got Zach Benson out of the way. I'm not getting my hopes up as much as I love this prospect so much. I just don't think he's going to make it to number 15. Let me move on to another player who I am a huge fan of, and I do think there's a very, very, very high-end chance that the Predators will be able to take this player at number 15. That is Gabe Perreault, comes from NHL bloodlines. His father is Yannick Perreault, very, very successful NHL player, but other reasons why I really like Gabe Perreault is he's just the scouts cannot get enough of his very high offensive IQ. He is like a point guard in basketball, dissecting the play, making the players around him better. Give us some things. Give us the lowdown on Gabe Perreault because I actually think there's a very good chance that he'll be available at number 15.
So Perreault on my board is actually at 20, and that may not sound super exciting in terms of like being a high-end prospect. You'd expect him to be ranked higher. But because it's more of a testament to how good this draft really is. The reason why Perreault's ranked at 20 for me, it's not because of a knock on his offensive game at all. I think you look at his offensive game, he's very well balanced. He has a very underrated shot. I don't think people talk about it enough. Personally, I think he's got good power, very, very accurate shot as well. And he has no problems getting them off either. And you mentioned his IQ, which is extremely evident when you watch his game and you read other scouting reports. He finds open areas consistently. He has such incredible vision away from the puck where he can exploit defensive zone coverages and find open spaces in high danger areas and be a threat as a goal scorer in those areas because of just how consistently he finds those openings in the offensive zone. It's just incredible to watch. With the puck on his stick as a playmaker, just setting aside his shot for a moment, his playmaking is amongst the best in the class. His vision is great. He has no problems. He oozes confidence, so he has no problems going for those high-danger passes with regularity and trying to exploit defensive zone coverages with regularity. The biggest issue that I have with Gabe Perreault, and it stems a lot from my player development research that I've been doing, and that's he plays on such a good NTDB team that is he getting some of the softer matchups? You know, are his teammates also helping push his game further? I mean, yes, he's making his teammates better because of his high-paced game, but how much of it is him and how much of it is also his star-caliber line mates and teammates with Ryan Leonard, Will Smith, Oliver Moore, guys that I right now have ranked ahead of Perreault. So there's a lot to weigh in and take into account in regards to that. Another reason why I have him ranked a little bit lower than some of the consensus is his defensive game is very far back right now, especially compared to other prospects in this draft. He is very disengaged and not the most active in the defensive zone. As soon as one of his teammates gets possession of the puck, he flies up ice. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there are guys in the NHL. Kent Johnson was a guy that did something similar in his draft year with Michigan where he wasn't very engaged defensively and would jump up ice really quickly, and he's turned out just fine for Columbus. There's really not a lot to hate about his game, but there are concerns about translating that offensive game, that high pace, to the NHL level. If he's able to transition from the USHL smoothly into the NCAA, and then from there work on that game even further and then transition that to the pro level, then he could be easily a high-end hockey player. I don't know if he'll ever be elite. He could reach that level, of course. I mean, it's hard to really say he won't at this stage because his stick handling, his well-balanced game with his shot, his passing ability, and his IQ that's off the charts, constantly able to find open space, spells success at the next level. But with the puck, he plays at such a high pace, fast pace, that sometimes he just makes some questionable mistakes with the puck. Sometimes he forces plays with the puck, and he can get himself into tighter situations, and he isn't always able to stick handle out of it. He's not exactly the best skater either. He's not a bad skater by any means, but he doesn't quite have the skating ability to get out of certain tight situations either. So the biggest thing for Pearl is, and this is why it's so good to go to the NCAA level for him, is he has a lighter game schedule, so he's able to hit the gym more, get stronger on his feet, and also work on that skating ability with now NHL level coaches. Work on that defensive game the same way Kent Johnson was able to out in Michigan to give him a better chance of making it to the NHL level. If Pearl hits, he could be a steal in this draft. But I question whether he will hit. I hope he does. Obviously, I'm not going to ever root against a young kid, but that's my big concern with Pearl at this stage.
And that's kind of why he's not a boom top 10 type of pick, because he does, once you start getting into this 15 to 30 range, every prospect that's going in this range is going to have their weaknesses to go along with their strengths. And you're going to, you're taking a chance. You're always going to take a chance when you're in the draft, especially when you're getting into the mid to late first round and definitely beyond that. But one thing I really like about Gabe Perreault more than anything is he seems like a pretty safe pick. Like, he's a good consolation prize. If one of these, like a Zach Benson, doesn't fall to your grips, then I think at number 15, Gabe Perreault can be a very safe pick because he does already have so many great offensive qualities that will eventually translate to the NHL. And then also the weaknesses that you are mentioning, his deficiencies, he can work on those things. He's definitely way more of a development type of player. I think the biggest concern, and a very valid concern that you just brought up, Kyle, is how much of his success is because he played on such a loaded team for the U.S. development team. Just want to mention, I came across this earlier today on a scouting report about him. Teammate Ryan Leonard, who's a top 10 projected pick. Of course, teammates are always going to say really nice things about each other, but Leonard calls Perreault the smartest player in the draft. So I like smart players. I do. And I think that could bode well for him to eventually, at worst, I think he's a bottom 6 quality NHL player, right? Do you think that's probably a safe measuring stick for him?
I think a safe projection for Pro is like a top 9 guy, similar to like Blake Coleman before he signed in Calgary, where in New Jersey he was a third-line scorer that could also play really well on the first or second line. When given opportunities, he would do well in those spots. I don't think he's as good in terms of defensive abilities as a guy like Coleman, but I think he has those same traits where I think he can play well in any situation on any line with anybody because he has a good shot, he exploits defensive zone coverages, and is able to open up passing lanes for teammates because of his positioning. So he could be a goal scorer on a line. He also has outstanding playmaking ability, so he can be that guy for a line. So I think because of his ability to kind of play any sort of style in the offensive zone will bode well for his future. So if he does make the jump to the NHL level, which I think at this point is not so much safe, but I think is a pretty good projection that he will make it. He could play up and down a lineup, in my personal opinion. So I think that's very valuable for any team that takes him.
All right. So we got 3 down here. Let's round out 2 more on my trade board, and then we're going to ask Kyle what he thinks about the top end of the draft that's obviously loaded and just stacked with not just Connor Bedard, but others as well. I want to see if Kyle thinks that there could be some shakeups or if it's going to be all chalk. Where does he see some volatility there possibly in the top 10 to really see some fireworks there to get the draft. Because all it takes is one team not toting the line and making a crazy pick no one saw coming to just have a domino effect and shake everything else up. So I want to get your thoughts on that. I'm going to ask you if you think the Predators could be one of those teams that could shake up the top 10 and trade up, because they do have 13 draft picks. So when you have that many picks, you're someone who has a lot of chips on the table and you can make things happen. So we'll see about that. Let's get two more in real quick. These are definitely more project type players, but definitely players that I chose because I do think they fit a prospect pool need for the Predators, and I also think they're very realistic and they'll be there for the taking. Let's go to a player out of the WHL, a centerman, Brayden Yager. He's consistently, I've seen him 15. I've seen him outside of the top 20. I haven't seen him any higher than 15 on any mock drafts that I've come across. So kind of give us the lowdown on Brayden Yager, some of his strengths, and why you think, what are some of his deficiencies that push him to 15 or later?
So the biggest thing with Yager, I'm low on Yager, and one of the guys I talked to said I'm probably the lowest that he's seen on Yager. And honestly, I'm just not too big of a fan. I wish I could say I was, but I have a lot of concerns with Brayden Yager. I think his shot is outstanding. I think he has one of the better shots in this draft class. I don't think anyone would argue otherwise. I mean, he has a powerful shot. He has for a guy who isn't as big as, a guy like Alex Ovechkin, who can generate a ton of power off his shots, he generates a lot. It's about his shooting mechanics. Everything about his shot is just so good. And he's able to generate so much power from it. He's super accurate as well. He's a guy that if he's given an opportunity on the power play, he's like the Stamkos Ovechkin type, where he'll set up at the face-off dot and you just feed him the puck all day long, and eventually one of those shots is going to go in. That's how good his shooting is. But when watching him play, there's been a lot of times where I'm sitting there thinking to myself, when he's away from the puck, move your feet. I found myself a lot of the times telling myself over and over again, like, why isn't he going here? Why isn't he attacking the slot? Why is he just – because there are times where he'll just be floating in the offensive zone, not really opening himself up for teammates as a scoring threat. And for a guy who has such a good shot, all you have to do is get open, not even a ton of space. Just find a spot where a teammate can hit you, and your shot is so good, you'll beat just about any goaltender. So I get frustrated sometimes watching him play because he just doesn't really move his feet or put himself in advantageous situations away from the puck. When he has the puck, he has good hands and he has confidence, but there are a lot of questionable mistakes that he makes. His vision isn't great. Sometimes he puts the blinders up is the term that I use, where if he has the puck on a stick and he sees a shooting lane, everything else around him just kind of disappears and he loses sight of a better option or a better passing play, or maybe a different skating lane to attack to have a better chance of scoring off his own shot. Another concern I have is his transitional game. A lot of the times he was a passenger coming up the ice on the transitional game, where teammates would do a lot of the dirty work. They dump it in forecheck, and he would kind of be watching them do the hard work. And that's, again,
that's a major concern.
It is.
That's not gonna translate well at all to the NHL.
It won't as it's currently constructed now.
And let me say one more thing too, real quick, before you finish that. Also, you can have the best shot ever, but it takes way more than that. You're never going to get to use and display that great shot on the NHL level if you're taking plays off, if you're not moving without the puck. All of those important things that you have to show in the NHL, at least a little bit. No one said you have to be the best, mover without the puck, but you definitely have to show a lot of improvement from what we're seeing. And that's why he's definitely falling to 15 and later in a lot of mock drafts.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from wanting Yager on their team. By no means is that what I'm going for, because when he's on his game, when he's confident, when he's really having one of the better games of the season, he can be moving his feet. He can find those open spaces. He's capable of doing that. It's more a question of, can he do it on a consistent basis? Because what I saw when I was watching him was there were shifts he took off where he didn't move his feet, wasn't getting open for teammates. And then there were other shifts where he was buzzing around the offensive zone. Not so much forechecking. That's not really his style. He's not really a guy that's going to win those battles on the boards or really get involved very often. but he at least showed flashes of ability to find open space and to give his teammates an option. He showed flashes of playmaking ability where he can make a difficult pass from time to time, and he's willing to attack those high danger areas too. It's just, can he do it on a more consistent basis? And I think that's going to be a major question that needs to be answered next year. If he can take a big step forward next year, he could be the steal of the draft because his shot is just so undeniably great.
Yeah.
That's all he's missing.
So Braden Yeager seems like a very high boom or bust type of prospect to take at number 15. You could hit a home run on it, or it could be a very, very big bust. Adam Kimmelman, NHL.com writer, looking at this mock draft there, he has Braden Yeager being picked by the Predators in his latest mock draft. He says Barry Trotz, who will take over as general manager July 1st, wants his scouts to take some high-end swings on some guys. So Yeager would be the perfect addition here. The right shot forward is a strong, quick skater and a puck hound with a dynamic shot. Kind of what you're saying, Kyle. Same thing. He's got an outstanding shot. He needs to get stronger, but the upside is a top-line center that can make players around him better. Ooh, if you get a top-line center at number 15, then that's definitely a home run. That's not just a home run. That's a grand slam. So we'll see if Trotz wants to really take a big swing like he says he does. Braden Yeager will probably be on the board when the Preds pick, more than likely. So we'll see. Last one I got for you on my Preds trade board for Kyle Pereira who writes scouting reports for Last Word on Sports. Let's talk about Samuel Honzek, who I feel like has been shooting up some draft boards lately. I feel like he's really raising his stock. What do you think is the reason for that? I've been reading a lot of scouting reports that are leaning towards he's definitely improved his stock, and he seems kind of all over the place. Like, I've seen him picked outside the top 20. I've seen him picked at 15. He's definitely someone who take your best guess on where he's going to be picked in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with Sam Honzek is he doesn't have the best potential. Like, he's not a guy you can really comfortably look at and say he'll be a top-line guy one day. What he does bring to the table is he's a puck hound. He forechecks, he backchecks. He's a mature defensive forward. He gets the job done. He's super efficient. Transitionally, he's not going to be overwhelmingly good off the rush. He's not going to be a guy that you have to, that you're going to rely on transporting the puck up the ice. But when the puck is on his stick and he's tasked with moving the puck up ice, he is efficient. He's smart. He doesn't turn the puck over very often. He makes the right decisions 99% of the time. In the offensive zone, he doesn't really push the pace a whole lot. But when he has the puck on his stick, he can be effective. He has a good shot. He's got a good passing ability. The biggest thing that lacks in his game is that pace. Which a guy like Braden Yeager, he's got pace to his game because he's always trying to attack. He's always trying to find ways to utilize his shot. A guy like Pereira, who we touched on, extremely high-paced offensive game. He's always looking to stick handle his way through the defense, open up passing lanes for his line mates, open up shooting lanes for himself. He's always looking for those opportunities. Honzek is more, I would say, laid back in his offensive game, but he's also very, very smart as well. He's big. He's hard to knock off the puck. And again, as you see on the screen, 6'4", 185 pounds. He's got a very big frame, and he moves very well for his size. And it's part of it is his edge work, his ability to stop on the puck, change directions with the play. He can keep up. He may not be the fastest guy. He may never be a very fast skater, but he keeps up with the play very surprisingly well for a guy of his stature. And he's only going to get heavier as well, which will be even better for him moving forward. So the biggest knock on Honzek is the fact that he doesn't have a very high upside style. He's not a guy that's going to break a game open offensively. He's not a guy that's going to really take control of a game, but he's a guy who you could look at and say that's a future middle six forward right there, whether it's center, whether he moves to wing, whatever it is. He looks like a guy who you could comfortably project as a third line forward right out of the gates. Like, he's a guy I look at. I really like his floor. I think he plays a style, an effective style that projects very well to the pro game. And I think NHL coaches will love him. He seems like a guy that's very, very easily coached. And I think that bodes well for his NHL future, really.
Interesting. Yeah. So unlike a Zach Benson, who obviously his ceiling is so high, but he's undersized, which you say is being overblown. But Sam Hanzik he's big. He's not going to have any problem bumping bodies at the NHL level at 6'4", 185 pounds as a forward. That's big. And you say in your scouting report here, he's actually a pretty good skater, even for being that big, which that draws me in. Even though Braden Yeager, because I'm kind of comparing the two, Hanzik and Yeager, because I feel like both of them are going to definitely be there at number 15. If I got to pick between these two, and I know there's others as well, and I might ask you if there's another player outside of my trade board that the Predators should look at. We can go to that next. But if I'm picking just between Hanzik and Yeager, I would actually feel safer about Hanzik because at least he brings a lot of really good tools and traits. And although his ceiling might not be through the roof or anything, but like I like a lot of his qualities here, and I do love his overall physical attributes, just that alone.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a guy that's as big, you can't teach size. You know what I mean? That's something you're born with, and it's genetics, obviously. So for an NHL GM, that's why size sometimes is overvalued, because when you have a guy that's that big and shows that much skill in juniors, why are we going to take the Zach Benson when you have a guy like Hanzik? Obviously, Zach Benson's another level of talent to Sam Hanzik. And again, that's not a knock on Hanzik. That's just how good Zach Benson is. Yeah. But a lot of GMs will look at that and say, why are we going to take this guy like Gabe Perreault, who's smaller, higher paced, but smaller, more like higher ceiling, but again, smaller. When you have a guy like Sam Hanzik, who you can comfortably say he's coachable, he plays a style that will transition to the pro game effectively. Based on what we know now, of course, it looks like something that could translate to the NHL game really well. And he's got great size. You can't argue against size. That's just who he is. And even though he might not be the most physical guy, like he's not going to throw his body into people consistently and kind of have that Nicholas Kronwall highlight reel of just knocking players down consistently along the boards. But he's so smart with using his frame defensively, using his frame in the offensive zone, being super hard to knock off the puck, and just keeping the offensive flow moving when he's on the ice. And I know you mentioned the Predators are looking for guys that are faster paced. That might not be Sam Hanzik, which is why the Predators might not go down that route, which I'm sure you're fully aware of. But if they want a guy who can play a really good depth role for them, meaning third line, maybe even second line, if his offensive game can take that next step, you can't go wrong with a guy like Sam Hanzik, in my opinion.
For sure. And I agree with you. I don't think he necessarily fits what they're saying that they're kind of looking for, but the Predators also pick at number 24, assuming that they don't decide to make some trades and stuff. And maybe Hanzik somehow falls in the first round. I would love to get a Hanzik at number 24 if he's still on the board. That I would see who they get at number 15 and then take Hanzik at number 24 if he did happen to fall. I'd be ecstatic about that. But we'll see. All right, do you have anyone else, just focusing on the 15th pick, that I left out of my top 5 that you think, okay, I could see this player if I was going to do a mock draft, or you said you're working on a mock draft now. Would it be one of those 5, or do you have someone else that I didn't mention that you really like for the Preds?
There's a couple names that I really like. For the Preds specifically, I think a guy like Andrew Cristall could definitely be on their board. Fast guy, fast-paced offensive game. The biggest concern on him is size, and he also had an injury this season, so that brings a lot of pause to teams and scouts. Another name is Colby Barlow, kind of a bigger guy, but he's got more skill than Sam Hanzik. If he'll be available at 15 is kind of a toss-up at this point. But the name that comes straight to the forefront is Gavin Brindley of Michigan, playing with Adam Fantilli this year. He is my second favorite prospect behind Zach Benson this year. I mean, the guy he's like the Energizer Bunny. The guy doesn't stop. He's constantly flying around the ice, offensively, defensively, transitionally. Watching games of his playing for Michigan alongside of Fantilli, I mean, they were line mates the second half of the year just about. I would argue that Gavin Brindley raised Fantilli's game up a bit with the finer details that he played with. Fantilli obviously has the skill, and he has the finishing ability. He has the IQ command the puck and dominate offensively. But Gavin Brindley opened up a lot more opportunities for Fantilli when they were put together than Fantilli had at the beginning of the year. And for me, Brindley led the way transitionally for Michigan when they were on the ice. It was not Fantilli. It was Gavin Brindley who took the brunt of the transitional work, which I think is extremely notable. In the offensive zone, he was by far one of the best forecheckers, second probably only to Benson. He just flew in. He had good speed, great edge work. He would fly in and put pressure on defensemen consistently, force a lot of turnovers, not as much as Benson, as you touched on. 13 in 3 games is just ridiculous. But he was super effective on the forecheck. He's very effective on the back check. He plays a mature defensive game. He's just really well-rounded with a lot of offensive skill. And there's a small group of people, including myself, that are very, very high on Brindley. I have him in my top 10. It's unlikely he goes in the top 10, but that's where he is on my board. And there's a select few people, a group of people who also have him high on their boards, including the top 10. Is he going to be available at 15? I genuinely think so. I think it's a mistake. I think people look at his size and the fact that he played with Fantilli and say, oh, he didn't, that was Fantilli who made him look better than he is, or he's too small, whatever, kind of like the Zach Benson argument. But Gavin Brindley is a really good player, and I think he's being overlooked heavily because of the fact that he played alongside of Fantilli more than anything else.
All right, Barry Trotz, are you listening right now? I mean, you better subscribe to Catfish on Ice and look at Gavin Brindley. We're letting you know right now. We're giving you all this free content. I'm sure you have everything at your disposal with your scouting department, but hey, you heard it here first. Gavin Brindley. All right, let's ask Kyle Pereira about this because I've been preaching this, like I think without a doubt they should do this, but I definitely think it should be considered at least. And if the opportunity presents itself, go for it. You don't acquire all this draft capital with all those trades they made. Predators decided to pretty much gut their season and trade away 4 key players in their starting lineup at the trade deadline, got a ton of draft picks, including 5 draft picks alone from the Tampa Bay Lightning to send Tanner Jeannot there, which, Kyle's over there shaking his head because he covers the Lightning. And, I guess I got to ask you real quick because I haven't talked to you about it really. How you feeling about Tanner Jeannot and giving up all those draft picks?
I do like Tanner Jeannot. I really do. I like the style of play. I thought of course, he was injured in the playoffs, but I thought he was a really good player for the Lightning. I think there was some untapped potential that the Lightning could maybe unlock with their development staff and their coaching staff in the NHL. I think they've done a phenomenal job with players in the past. But man, that was a lot.
It's too soon to say. For all we know, both teams will end up winning that trade. Everyone always tries to find a winner and a loser, but sometimes in trades, both teams can come out winners. So that's a lot of draft picks to give up, 5 draft picks. I mean, it's for Tanner Jeannot, who's never really been a massive point scorer in the league. So they obviously see something in Tanner that they really feel good about. So we'll see how that unfolds. Of course, all of Smashville is rooting for Tanner Jeannot. He's one of the top fan favorites here, and it was really hard for people to see him get traded. And then, of course, okay, so let me ask you this. Since the Preds have 13 draft picks and they have even more draft picks in the next couple of drafts, like they just have a boatload of very high-end draft picks. They have a lot of second-round picks. They have just tons to throw at teams if they want to make moves here. Do you think that the Predators are probably one of the top teams that can shake the top 10 up if they decide to trade into the top 10?
They absolutely can. They absolutely can. Will they? That's a completely different question, but they have the assets to do it. Now, trading, the thing that gets complicated is how willing are teams within the top 10 to trade up their picks.
To play ball. Yeah.
Yeah, because you look at this draft class, especially, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the top of the class is just so high-end that you'd be hard-pressed to find a team willing to work to trade back.
Exactly.
That's the biggest obstacle. They're able to find a dance partner in the top 10. And let's just say, I don't know who's picking 8th, but let's just throw number 8 out there, the 8th overall pick.
Well, I've looked at the Red Wings at number 9, but yeah, number 8, we got the Capitals. So
let's just say, the Capitals are usually a perennial playoff team. Maybe they're willing to trade back to add to their core or something. Who knows? what the Capitals are thinking. But if that presents itself as an option, the Capitals are willing to trade back with Nashville. Let's just say you don't pull the trigger yet. Let's see how the top of the draft falls out. See how it plays out. If the top 5 is done, and you have guys like Zach Benson or Matvei Mishkov still available somehow for different reasons, varying reasons, there's no reason why you shouldn't trade up and say, you know what? I know 6th overall, they haven't picked yet. But if we can trade up to number 8 and have the chance to have Zach Benson or Matvei Mishkov, even if we don't have those guys, there's still some top-end talent that's going to be available at that spot. Why not make that trade? I think the Predators could definitely shake up a lot within the top 10 if they're willing to find someone and if they're willing to make that trade themselves. I think it's worth it.
I look at the Red Wings, too, at number 9. That's kind of a team that's interesting to me because I feel like they're on the back end of their rebuild. They're getting closer. If you could throw the 15th pick at them, and maybe there's someone at 15 that they really like that they know they'll be able to get. And if you're going to have to stack the trade deck here and give them a lot in return to give up that number 9, even to just move up 6 spots, you're going to have to give a lot. So it is a risk. But when you have 13 draft picks, maybe the Red Wings are a team that thinks, okay, we're really close to competing right now. We should be a playoff team next year with the way our rebuild's going. We're willing to get a lot of future draft picks, maybe a 2nd-round pick here, maybe give us a really good prospect that we can work with that can replace that number 9 pick that we're giving up. We'll move back to number 15, and the Preds move up to number 9 and get a Zach Benson, who they really want, or someone like that. That's kind of my thinking right now, is find a team that's not completely married to being in the top 10. They already feel like they're pretty good. And I think the Capitals and the Red Wings, 8 and 9, are the two, because once you get past that, you've got a lot of teams who aren't going to be willing to move. You got the Blues. The Blues are on the downturn right now. They're about to go through some tough times, I believe. Then you got the Canucks. They're not moving. First of all, at that point, that you're only moving up to number 11. But you got the Canucks. They're not moving. Let's see. If you move even above the Capitals at number 7, you've got the Flyers. I don't think they're going to want to move out of the top 10 at all, most likely. And then you get even higher, the Coyotes. I mean, the Coyotes do have 2 first-round picks. They got the 6th pick and the number 12 pick, I believe. So let me see. I'm getting all these picks mixed up.
I believe it's 6 and 12.
Yeah. So 6 and 12. So maybe the Coyotes, if you give them a really king's ransom, maybe the Coyotes are like, look, we're already picking at number 12. We're trying to stockpile draft picks for the future because obviously they're far deep into a rebuild. Maybe if you give them a lot, they'll say, hey, we're already picking at number 12, and we got a guy we really want at number 12, so we'll move out. I don't think it's going to happen. It's not highly. I'm just saying the Predators need to be on the phone, and they need to be gauging interest in it at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, if the Coyotes are willing to move on with or trade back from number 6, I'd go for it. Benson should be there.
Absolutely. All right, so we will keep an eye on that. One last thing before Kyle Pereira gets out of here. This has been a really awesome segment for our YouTube channel that we're going to put up before we put out the main episode, which we plan on recording later this week. So this is a gift to our YouTube subscribers to get an early look at episode 188 with this content here. All right, Kyle, I want to ask you, just give us how you see the top 5 picks shaking up. Do you think it's going to be all chalk? There's not going to be a lot of excitement, or do you think that there's a player or two that could shake things up, or a team that could shake things up, and then that's the domino effect we see, and then everything changes? GMs have to change who they're going to pick because someone got picked that they didn't see expecting to get picked or something like that. What do you see happening in all that? Or do you think it's going to be pretty smooth sailing and everything happens the way we expect it to happen?
I think the top 3 will go pretty much exactly as everyone's anticipating. Bedard, Fantilli at 2, and then Carlson at 3. I think that's pretty consensus at this point that that's what's going to happen. I like to believe that Mishkov should go 4, but there's a lot of concerns surrounding, obviously, the Russia-Ukraine war. Yes. His contract extends to, I believe, 2025, so he's still going to be stuck there for a couple more seasons, so you're going to have to wait. And even then, will he be able to come over? So that's the biggest concern. Some team's going to be willing to take that risk. Mishkov is a phenomenal talent, but that's a question if he'll go for.
Michkov is the wild card here. I'm glad you brought him up because for very, very unfortunate and sad reasons, of course, that we just don't know where he's going to go. We know where he should go, as you just said, based on his talent alone, but we just don't know because of outside circumstances what's going to happen. And if he just continues to fall further and further back in the top 10, that's going to just GMs are going to be scrambling to think, do we take a chance on this? Do we take a chance or do we not take a chance? So he's definitely the main one that everyone's going to be watching to see where he goes is Michkov.
Yeah. And so the top 3, like I said, should go pretty much as planned. 4 is where it gets muddled. 4 and 5 is where it gets muddled, really, because Michkov could go 4, he could go 5. Benson could be in there as well. I think a guy like David Reinbacher could go in there as well, although I'm not that high on Reinbacher. I do like Reinbacher, but a top 5 pick is a bit much, but I'm seeing a lot more out there that he could very much go within the top 5 if a team wants to go defense there. Will Smith is another guy that teams are really high on. He could sneak into the top 5. Axel Sandin-Pellikka. I mean, the difference between him and Reinbacher, I don't think is that large. So if a team values Sandin-Pellikka more than Reinbacher, maybe he could sneak into the top 5 also. I mean, there's a few names that could go up there for sure, but that's where it becomes muddled. 4 and 5 will be the interesting picks because Michkov should go 4. Despite the circumstances, he should go 4. If he doesn't, could be Benson, could be a defenseman. It could be it could be Will Smith. I mean, there's so many different ways numbers 4 and 5 could go that could really dictate how the rest of the draft goes.
Yeah, so it sounds like to me buckle your seatbelts. We're in for a really exciting draft. Obviously, we're getting to see Connor Bedard, a generational talent, get drafted. I'm going to be there, and it breaks my heart. It's very bittersweet that I'm going to be there in person, and I get to watch my most hated franchise, the Chicago Blackhawks, draft Connor Bedard. That's going to hurt. That's going to sting. But at the same time, it's going to be cool to see in person Connor Bedard get drafted and see this loaded draft class go. It's going to be fun. I wasn't going to miss it for anything being in my hometown. So I'll be there. And then, this top 10, the way it shakes out is going to be very, very exciting and very interesting. That's why every mock draft I come across, it's all over. They're all over the place. There's so much disagreement, as you said, outside of the top 3. There's tons of disagreement and debate on how the rest of the first round is going to go. So it's going to make for a really awesome 2023 NHL draft. We appreciate you coming on, Kyle.
Yeah, I love being here. I love talking about hockey.
All right, so this has been Kyle Pereira, our guest, at Pereira_report, Pereira_report. Last word on sports. Go check out all of his scouting reports right now to get your research in and do your homework on the draft class. It's a lot of fun. I love the draft time. The only part of the NHL calendar, other than obviously the playoffs, that gets me most excited. Obviously the trade deadline is always really exciting, all the madness there, but this time of year, since we're kind of starved for hockey outside of the 2 teams that are in the Stanley Cup, getting ready for this draft is just perfect. It gives you some of that. It fills that void since we don't have our favorite hockey teams playing right now.
Yes.
Of course, you as a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, I don't feel too much sympathy for you because you've been spoiled the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it was worth it. But honestly, getting the first round exit stunk for a couple days. But knowing that, okay, I can take a deep breath and just focus on my scouting, I kind of enjoy it.
It definitely gave you some extra time since you're not having to follow a playoff run.
Yeah.
All right, man. Take care. It's been a pleasure. Definitely will have you back on probably in the next month or 2 because we're going to have to get your thoughts on who the Predators take in this draft. So until then, you've been outstanding. We will stay in touch. This has been Kyle Pereira joining episode 188 of Catfish and Ice. Please hit subscribe below on our YouTube channel. It helps a ton. Comment on the streams, of course, and all of that good stuff. We will have a live episode on our YouTube channel either tonight or tomorrow. We're trying to figure out the logistics there, but we'll have a live episode. Until then, everyone have a great and safe day. We'll see you next time.